Welcome back to American Vampire, right here at Comicstorian, where we take some of your favorite comic books, video games, and movies and break down the storylines within them into a synopsis, allowing you to know what's happening so you can talk about it with your friends. Today we're going to be doing the other half of American Vampire. Issues 1 through 5 told two different stories, the one of Pearl that I brought you last week, and the origins of Skinner Sweet, the vampire that started all of the American Vampire stuff. Today we're going to bring you those origins, and if you enjoy it, stick around at the ending, give this video a like, hit that subscription button, and don't forget to join us for our podcast at twitch.tv/Comicstorian. Thank you, and enjoy the story. As we start with American Vampire, issue number 1. William Bunting stands before a crowd at a local bookstore. He is retelling the classic tale of the outlaw, Skinner Sweet. But he explains that while his work has always been known as an account of horror fiction, he is now revealing it to be fact. That everything that he has written is true. Sidewinder, 1880. The crowd cheers as the train begins to pull away from the station. Calls for a hanging are echoing in the ears of the Pinkerton detectives. Jim Book, Deputy Camillo, and Bram Percy, their employer. "Hanging good for Skinner Sweet! Burn him alive!" someone shouts. The Pinkerton agents head inside while their employer complains that the sun is burning his pale skin. Agent Jim Book takes over the watch of the prisoner, relieving Felix Juarez, his young partner and friend. Well, the hero of the day. Can I have an autograph? Skinner sneers. Skinner continues to smile, trying to convince Book to give him the peppermint stick that is stuck in his hat. Book ignores him, asking the whereabouts of his outlaw friends. "Well, you see, that's for me to know, and for you to find out," Skinner tells him. And at that very moment, Skinner's outlaw friends watch the train, confident that Skinner will survive the crash, and reminding each other that they need to leave no witnesses. Back on the train, the Pinkerton employees make grand speeches about the capture of Skinner Sweet. The outlaw listens, cocking his head. "He makes it sound like I was captured in the biggest battle since Shiloh Church, instead of sleeping it off in some whore's sperm hammock." Skinner scoffs. The outlaw smiles, letting Book know that he'll get free, and surprises him by mentioning the man's fiancée. Finally, Book has had enough and asks one of the other deputies to take over. The man sits down with Skinner leaning in to study him. "Boo!" he shouts, making the man jump. The man looks away from Skinner's intense eyes, thus missing as the outlaw begins to use the peppermint stick to pick at his shackles. Skinner tries to scare the man again, but this time he doesn't jump, asking the outlaw how stupid he thinks he is. "Pretty stupid!" Skinner shouts as he wraps his chains around the man's neck. Book draws his pistol, but at that exact moment, the conductor notices the rocks on the train and slams on the brakes. The train continues forward, twisting and jumping off of the tracks, with Skinner pulling himself free, calling out to his gang. "Hello, boys! It's just like we planned," he shouts. The outlaws begin to shoot as people try to flee from the train, but Skinner leaps, tackling Book to the ground. Skinner smiles, telling Book that he won't kill him, because nobody could go to his fiancée's funeral. Book is shocked as Skinner reveals that he sent the woman a bottle of wine with poison in it. Skinner cracks the man in the jaw, leaving him to struggle to stand, and he walks over to his men, taking one of their pistols and preparing to shoot the other special agent. But Book gets his gun, yelling for Skinner to drop his weapon. Skinner turns, using the other agent as a shield and opening fire on Book. The man falls as the bullets whip around him, and Skinner and his men turn, seeing the rich employer of the Pinkerton detectives standing before them. "I think we've had about enough of your shit, Mr. Sweet," the man tells them. "And I've had about enough of yours, Percy. Shoot 'em, boys," Skinner tells his gang. The outlaws open fire, bullets ripping through Percy's chest, but the man, well, he doesn't fall. He looks up and he glares, baring his fangs. "You're dead! You can't!" Skinner begins, and in a flash, Percy is crossing the distance, grabbing the outlaws. "I'm not, and I can," he shouts. The man bites down into the outlaw's neck, ripping out chunks of skin. Skinner gets his gun up, firing into the vampire's chest. Blood splatters from the wounds, landing in Skinner's eye and his open neck. The rest of the outlaws run as the survivors begin to gather themselves, and Percy glares down at the dead Skinner, commenting on how he just wanted to set an example of stealing from him. As they all begin to walk away, leaving the bodies behind, a grin begins to play on Skinner's lips. 1882, beneath the soil of Boot Hill, Skinner Sweet lay trapped in his coffin. Jim Book finally awoke from his wounds, only to have his friend tell him that his fiancée had been poisoned by the notorious outlaw. He's gonna go piss on the man's grave, hoping that his mouth might be open beneath the earth. Jim turns away, planning to ride home to pay his respects. Mind if I tag along? The young bunting asks. Jim Book tells him to just keep up. The vampire, Percy, watches the men ride out of the town, his colleagues commenting on how Skinner might have been turned. But Percy doesn't care. He doesn't believe that he turned Skinner, and besides, he's more worried about the money that is to be made from the railroad and the dam that they're building that will put Stillwater underwater. So even if Skinner does rise, he'll be trapped beneath all the water, which is a weakness for a Vertilac. Book returned home, repaying his respects to the woman that he loved before riding off to his friends. And beneath the Boot Hill, Skinner smiles as he begins to feed on the rats. Time marches, and eventually the dam is built, and Stillwater is torn down, and what remains is eventually underwater. Book and Juarez continue their adventures across the West, and Juarez eventually marries, settling down with a nice woman. Book acts as the best man at the wedding and godfather to Juarez's daughter, though the wife doesn't make it. It's 1909 when the scavengers set out from the town of Lakeview for the remains of the Sidewinder. A diver dips beneath the waves, knowing that any keepsakes from Skinner Sweet's body will be worth a small fortune to a collector. He finds the coffin of Skinner Sweet, barely beneath the shifting sands anymore, and he reaches for the lid, prying it ever so slightly open. Inside, the wood splinters and explodes outwards. "Hello, got any candy?" Skinner howls. The divers are dead, and Skinner pulls himself out of the lake. Crossing the hills, he finds a new town. Gotta find Percy and the Pink. Lots to do. But first, I want some candy! Skinner Sweet hisses. Skinner pulled himself down from the hills, finding the town of Lakeview. He is shocked by the modernization of the town. He wasn't sure how long he'd been in the ground, but what he does find is a candy shop, and he ignores one of the town's dogs as he kicks in the door. Skinner begins to gorge himself on candy and ice cream, and he finds that he is still hungry. "I didn't come back from the grave to starve in a candy shop," he snarls. The shop owner is suddenly behind him, aiming a shotgun at his head, but Skinner leaps, biting down onto the man's neck. "Everything tastes better when you're dead. Who knew?" Skinner Sweet laughs. The next morning, Skinner awakens next to his kill, and the sound of a car backfiring draws him into the streets. "I'll be a horseless carriage," he gasps. Wandering through the town, he arrives at the city hall where he recognizes the name of the mayor. It was Jim Book's partner's father. He laughs, pulling down his pants, pissing on the building. Two of the city constables appear behind Skinner, planning on bringing him in, but Sweet goes feral, whirling around, slashing them to ribbons. The townspeople begin to scream at the carnage, and Skinner begins to lose himself in the bloodlust. "Payback starts here, and payback's a bitch!" The streets begin to run red with blood as Skinner works his way through the city, murdering everyone that he can find. Percy and his vampire kin watch from the safety of their windows, unable to stop or follow Skinner as he wanders into the mining warehouse. One of Skinner's old enemies has become the chief of police. Chief Finch laughs as his men tell him that the attack looks like Skinner Sweet. "You idiot! Sweet's 30 years at his grave. I ought to know I put him there." The mayor comes out, quickly forming a posse to hunt the man down, but before they can even move, Skinner Sweet presents himself. "I left you a little something in yonder warehouse." He smiles. An explosion ripping through the streets, destroying the building, but the police open fire anyway. The rounds seem to have no effect on Sweet. "Why, if it ain't Book's old boss, Finch? Where is he, boss man?" Sweet asks, looking bored. Finch looks scared, asking if Skinner will let him go if he tells him. "You bet, partner!" The vampire grins, Finch gulping, telling Skinner where Book and Juarez now live. Skinner smiles, lighting a stick of dynamite with his cigarette. "You promised!" Finch yells. "Nope, I said you bet. You did, and you lost," Skinner says as he walks away, letting Finch's head explode behind him. Sweet turns on the mayor as he holds a gun on him, putting up his hands. "Let's talk this over. I can see you've got a good head on your shoulders." And Skinner smiles at him. A short while later, Felix Juarez gets a telegram from Skinner Sweet, telling the man to meet him outside of the town. Felix looks at his friend, Jim Book. There's no argument, and the group of friends quickly hit the trail. Back in Lakeview, the vampires survey the damage the Skinner has done to their town. They've already sent men after him, and Percy smiles. Best case, our pet Humes tell us that Book and his friends have killed Sweets and solved our little problem. Worst case, we talk with our American vampire friend and we make a deal, Percy says, but the others aren't so sure that Skinner will make a deal. This is America! In America, everyone deals, even vampires. Jim, Book, and his friends climb the hills outside of the town looking for the caves to meet with Skinner's suite. Old Tar seemed pretty sure that it was Skinner's suite, but all the talk about fangs and how bullets wouldn't stomp him made him out to be a damn skinwalker, Juarez is saying. His daughter questions the reality of such things, but Book reminds them of what Bunting saw the day Skinner died. They all turn to Bunting, asking the writer what it was that he thinks that they're dealing with. The man nods, telling them that all of his research points to the idea of a vampire. A being infected with an ancient evil, Bunting explains, though he questions how Skinner can walk during the day. I only want to know one thing, Will. How do I kill him once and for all? Book asks. Inside of the cave, Skinner sits upon a makeshift throne. He grows weaker, though, noting that his fangs have disappeared and his skin seems soft and vulnerable. Why am I so sleepy? Why now? He questions, stumbling out of the cave, and he looks up at the moonless sky and realizes that this must be the reason for his weakness. But he hears them coming, calling out to Felix Juarez. You there? You want your old pappy? Come and get him! I'm all done with him, Skinner shouts, and Felix falls to his knees as he sees the head of his father hanging from a tree. He finally stands, pulling his pistol as he heads down into the cave. On the hill, Percy and his vampire brood watch through the binoculars, and they see that Will and Felix are heading into the cave, leaving behind Bunting and Abelina. Mein Gott, I'm hungry. Let's go get someone to eat. Percy smiles. Felix heads into the cave, screaming for Sweets, but he stumbles on a rock and he falls. How about a little light, amigo? Skinner snaps, lifting the man off the floor. He holds a torch in one hand and pushes it against one side of Felix's face. I can't eat a thing. I'd pay $1 million for a full moon. The monster snarls. Book has followed his friend, stopping at the entrance of the cave to light a match, but a hand stops him and Abelina is there, telling him that she has something that he needs to bring with him. Then his goddaughter pulls him in close, kissing him on the lips. Book reels in shock but doesn't push her away. When the kiss is over, he tells her to stay at the entrance to the cave. Just promise to send that monster to hell, she tells him. He pushes into the cave, finding Felix dead on the ground shortly, and as he continues to search, he senses Sweets coming up behind him. I knew you'd get her, Pink. The vampire laughs as he knocks the gun away from Book's hand, but Skinner is weakened by the moonless sky and Book manages to crack his arm. Whoever said you couldn't be hurt, they lied, Book says as he retrieves his gun and shoots Skinner in the chest. Hurt, yes. Kill, no. Skinner laughs at Book's shocked look. Really? Let's try a headshot then. Book nods, firing again, but Sweet manages to hold up a rock, ricocheting the bullet away. He throws the rock, cracking Book in the head and knocking him out. I was gonna kill you, but I got a better idea. Sweet smiles as he stands over the man. He reaches down, about to press his bloody fingers into Book's eyes, but a round cuts through the side of his head. Leave him alone, you monster! Abelina shouts, smoking pistol in her hands. A drop of blood lands on Book's face. Skinner runs deeper into the cave with Abelina firing after him as she rushes to Book's side. He manages to come to as the caves begin to come down around them, and as they jump outside just in time, the friends say goodbye to Felix. On the hill, the vampires drive away, happy with the fact that Sweet is buried beneath the earth. Everyone heads home, bringing the body of Felix with them, but for Jim Book, the horror was just beginning. Jim Book stumbles through the grass. He's so weak he can't fight it anymore, and he rushes after a prairie dog, devouring it. Back at his home, the doctors can't do anything for him, trying everything from leeches to miracle cures to shock therapy. But he chases the doctor off with Abelina finding him on the porch. They sit on the bed together with Book explaining to her that there is no good way that this ends, and he points at the mirror, showing his warped image. I can feel it in my blood. The hunger all the time, he gasps at her. But she doesn't care. She kisses him again, and he pushes her away, reminding her that he is her godfather and screaming for her to get out. Meanwhile, in Lakeview, some thugs are digging it through the collapsed cave that holds the body of Skinner Sweet, and they finally find the emancipated vampire. He struggles up, prepared to kill them. Our orders are to escort you to the banker Percy's ranch, the thugs tell him, trying to avoid a bloodbath, but Skinner lashes out against the thugs, ordering them to run while they can. Percy smiles, pulling a cross from one of the goons, saddling their horse. Time to meet my maker, he whispers. At Book's house, Abelina returns and Book looks at her, begging her to end his life. Tonight there's no moon. I'm at my weakest, he explains to her, and with the tears in her eyes, the young woman agrees. But I need something from you, she whispers to him. Skinner arrives at Percy's estate where he is escorted to the European. The vampire smiles at him, finally offering the American vampire a truce. He offers the man territory and the freedom to do what he wants. What's your answer? He asks with a large smile. A short time later, Skinner is dragging the man out of his own lavished house. He pulls him towards the rays of the rising sun. No, please, I'll do anything you want! Percy screams and the light begins to hit his skin as he screams more. Stop! I can get you $1 million! It's worth more than $1 million to see you rot. Skinner snaps at him, leaving him to burn. Plans, so many plans. Skinner sweets, whispers. And back at Book's house, Abelina explains that she wants to spend one night with Jim Book. That she has lost so much, and he's about to leave her as well. I need to hold on to something, a little piece of you, she whispers to him. They spent what time they had left together, and afterwards, Book leans back in the bed, telling her that without the moon, anything can be lethal. For the first time in 3 years, I feel like I can sleep, he whispers to her as she loads the pistol, tears in her eyes. The gunshot echoes throughout the moonless night. And later, Abelina stands over the graves of her father and Jim Book, a baby in her arms. Come on, little girl, let's go, she whispers. Behind her, Will Bunting stands, asking if he can come along. Abelina smiles as she echoes the words that Jim Book said to the man, just keep up. It is now 1925, and Will Bunting is finishing his retelling of his best-selling book, telling those that gathered that he decided to reveal that his work of fiction was actually the truth, that he had been there to recount these events, because the world is filled with monsters, and it is also filled with heroes like his friend Jim Book. The crowd begins to ask questions as to what happened to Abelina and the baby. Those are not my stories to tell, Bunting explains, and a short while later, Will Bunting is signing copies of his book when a scared man hands him a note dripping in blood. Dear Scribbler, you are old and I am young forever, so I will let you live to suffer and die. Why not? What better revenge is there than that? Here's an autograph for you, Skinner Sweet. The note reads, Skinner walks out the front of the bookstore, having finished listening to Bunting's retelling of his origin. But what he doesn't know is that as he walks down the street, there are two women watching him. Is that? The young girl begins, but her mother interrupts her. Yes, Felicia, the man who destroyed your father. But not today. But soon. Soon. Abelina tells her daughter. And that concludes the other half of issues 1 through 5 of American Vampire. Now, we've given you both sides of American Vampire and told you where the story is going to go, and I have given you the origins of Skinner Sweet. So aren't you curious what's going to happen next? If you are, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and let me know in the comments down below, Benny, I need more Skinner Sweet. I need to know more about this badass outlaw cowboy vampire. Because honestly, it's one of my favorite stories. Why don't you check it out yourself? Don't forget, you can also hit us up at Patreon at patreon.com/Comicstorian, where if we get the videos done early enough, you get early access over there. Thank you so much for your support, and I will see you next time right here at Comicstorian.